Hello and welcome to the Kim Iverson Show. Thank you guys so much for watching. So today we're going to be talking to an interesting young man, Jose Vega, who is running as an independent for New York's District 15 congressional seat against Democrat Richie Torres. And you might know Richie Torres because it turns out with this war breaking out in Gaza and everything going on in Israel, it turns out that Richie Torres is one of the biggest pro-Israel pro-Zionist shills that are sitting in Congress. I mean, he's very, very, very adamantly, really, really aggressively pro-Israel. And Jose Vega is taking him on. He wants to win his seat. Jose Vega is an anti-war candidate. He is known, you probably recognize him. We're going to play a couple of clips for you so that you can really jog your memory on this. But he is known for his really bold protesting. He interrupts speakers at various events, people like Rachel Maddow, Kamala Harris, Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, AOC, mainstream media like New York Times and Washington Post editors when they're speaking, and really challenges them on their pro-war stances. Here's actually a couple of those clips. Watch this.
Oh, is this the lecture hall with Seymour Hersh? I'm looking for the one with Seymour Hersh because it's a policy and press hall event. So shouldn't we be talking about the Nord Stream since that's the biggest story of the century? And you guys, I'm sorry. I mean, you have the executive editor of the New York Times there who came out with a phony story to try and block Seymour Hersh. It's just kind of funny how that happened,
We committed an act of war. What are you doing to respond to that? We have to hold Biden accountable. So listen, you're from Brooklyn, right? You know when to call bullshit when you see it. So do I. This is bullshit right now.
And I see what's happening right now. That does not silence me. You can hear me right now. I want you to say something about the bombing because we're all going to die from a nuclear war right now unless you stop it and you at least put and inquire into whether or not it's true. There will be no neighbors if there's a nuclear bomb. You voted to mobilize and send money to Ukrainian Nazis. You're a coward. You're a progressive socialist. Where are you against the war mobilization? He's telling the right truth. You have done nothing. Tulsi Gabbard has shown guts where you've shown cowardice. I believed in you, and you became the very thing you sought to fight against.
Creating quite a ruckus, wasn't he? He's actually the subject of a documentary with that title, Ruckus, The Making of a Revolutionary. It's actually a really well-done documentary. I watched it earlier today, and it's about an hour long, quite interesting. Jose Vega ends up, you really see some of his background, many of these moments of him interrupting a lot of these people, how he gets the courage to do that. And it's just really well done. And it's done by the guys at Do Dissidents. So we do have the link down below if you want to watch that documentary. But here's a little clip from it just so you can kind of get a taste.
I started election season as a Bernie bro, and I ended as a Trump voter.
How stupid are the people of Iowa?
How does that happen?
Somebody hits me where the belt's going in because the belt moves this way. It moves this way. It moves that way.
Well, like I was saying, I had anti-establishment sentiments.
Senator Sanders wasn't really a Democrat until he decided to run for president. He doesn't even know what the last two Democratic presidents did. And well, it's true. It's true. It's true.
I knew she was evil, and I was like, Bernie's my guy. And then he lost the primary. And then it gets revealed in the WikiLeaks emails that Hillary Clinton conspired to get him out of the race.
You're back in the news, of course, because WikiLeaks released thousands and thousands of emails from the Democratic National Committee.
All right, so we're going to be talking to Jose Vega. That is coming up here in just a... Jose Vega, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So let's get into, first of all, we just watched some of these clips of you being very, very bold and brave, confronting these various different people. Can you have you always been this way? Or is this something a skill you developed? Or tell us how you started protesting like this versus, I guess more of the traditional way of protesting or going to your Congress member, going and trying to make change other ways. Like, how did it get to this point?
Sure. Well, I mean, I went through that traditional way, write to your congressman, call your congressman. And it wasn't even for something that was foreign or something like war. It was just about the fact that I had an apartment that flooded with sewage water because the ceiling had just pooled with all this sewage water. So I went to my government, I go to my city councilman, I go to my congressman. I do all the things they tell you to do, get in touch, get involved. Well, I did. And nothing came out of it. And now you apply this principle of, okay, well, going through the steps, let's take that up a notch on issues like national issues or international issues. So I called Jamal Bowman's office and I said, listen, I have this idea, which is now my platform, called the Space CCC issue. I'd like to talk with you about it, about this actual policy. I don't think the Green New Deal is any good, and I'd like to talk to you about real actual policy. And I sat down with his senior policy advisor. Right. Nothing came out of that meeting. It was, the typical, yeah, this is a great idea. Let's talk more. Let's follow up. Nothing came out of it. And so in 2019, when I can't remember exactly what was going on at the time, but the Schiller Institute was writing extensively about the fact that there's a war being provoked between Ukraine and Russia. Right now, if you were paying attention to geopolitics at the time pre-COVID, you saw that there was a war building up and bubbling up between Ukraine and Russia. And so I intervened on Adriano Espaillat, who's a New York congressman, and I said, why is the Congress supporting neo-Nazis? I went there and I recorded it, but I didn't post it at the time because I didn't really understand, why did I do that way? It wasn't until I confronted Kamala Harris that I began to understand, whoa, there is a real hunger and thirst for somebody to speak truth. Somebody to actually speak up and say the obvious thing. This is the cheesy thing, right? The emperor has no clothes, right? The kid who screams, yeah. The emperor has no clothes, right? People are thirsty and hungry for that, So that's kind of where it started, because when that happened, nobody knew who I was, and I was okay with that. Nobody knew who I was, and people identified with that intervention on Kamala Harris. They just thought this was your typical New Yorker speaking the truth with a loud mouth, and people were writing articles saying, I agree with what this guy said. And so I was like, okay, there is what it means to hold someone accountable is to blast these people in public with the truth so they can't run from it and expose it. And now my interventions have not only been seen around the country, they've been seen around the world, right? Mm-hmm. They've been translated into 7-8 different languages. I get them sent to me in Spanish subtitles, Chinese subtitles, right? Russian subtitles, because the world is looking at the United States and saying, are you going to wage peace or are you going to wage war? Because they're begging us to wage peace. And it's no longer up to the elected officials to wage peace because they're not going to do it. They suck. The people have to do it. If you want real government, if you want to replace corrupt government, that means you have to become the government, and that means you have to become uncorruptible.
Well, and that's a big question. How do you make sure, because, many people saw like AOC, for example, when she was elected, people thought, okay, she's going to be the one that finally gets in there and breaks the establishment up. She protested when she first got there in Nancy Pelosi's office with the Sunrise Kids, if you remember, kind of creating a sit-in outside of her office, and everybody thought, oh, wow, she's really doing it. Whether people liked her politics or not, I think people could admire the fact that, or at least hoped on both sides of the aisle, that she was really going to truly oust Nancy Pelosi, that she was going to call her out and really disrupt the establishment. But she just became the establishment. I mean, she is the establishment. How do you think you can, have you developed a plan when you get elected and you get in there, how you're going to not allow yourself to be corruptible?
Well, this is the benefit of having very good friends and a good network of people who have been chased around, persecuted, and slandered for the last 50, 60 years. I mean, you saw in my bio, and in the documentary Ruckus, I'm associated with a group called the LaRouche Organization. And Helga Zepp LaRouche, right? She's the person who's kind of been running things around now at the Schiller Institute, now that Lynn has passed away. For the last 50 years, I mean, the people who went after this guy, Henry Kissinger, George H. Bush, George W. Bush, right? The entire case that put him in jail was the people we talk about today as the big bad guys. The only problem back then was there was no internet for us to really spread and get the message out. And so the way in which I will not become corruptible is because I have those people who have been persecuted for the last 50 years, who have been honest, whose methods and principles have been picked up around the world, except the United States. That's who's backing me. That's my network of people, real, honest people who know the background and history of how this country works, right? The other thing is, it's going to be people like you, Kim. It's going to be people who are watching this show, right? I don't take any IPAC money. I don't take any big donor money. I'm not going to take any big donor money. The thing is, people have been saying that this is a grift. You know what I found out recently, Kim? The FEC rules say I cannot pay myself more than what I made last year. You know what I made last year in taxes? $21,000. That's what I made. I legally cannot pay myself more in this campaign than that. You know what
Wow.
the poverty line is here in New York City? $34,000 a year. That's the poverty line, right? I legally cannot take more money than that throughout this entire year, right? I have to work part-time in order to make this campaign work. So this campaign cannot just be me running around being a loudmouth, although I promise you there's going to be a whole lot more of that. It's got to be other people running around being, causing a ruckus out there, intervening and using truth. We need to see, my campaign is about building up truth tellers, people who are willing to look in the face of lies and say, you know what, I'm going to be the person who decides to elect myself to tell the truth. That's what I want, actually. I want people outside of my district. I want 435 people, at least one person in every congressional district, who elects themselves to say, I'm going to tell the truth in the face of lies.
Yeah.
That's my campaign slogan. It's vote Vega, elect yourself. No one elected me to go and do those interventions. I just did them. So our people should do the same. I don't care if you're a libertarian. I don't care if you're a socialist. The point is, are you willing to tell the truth, no matter who you are?
Right. Well, and that's a good way to look at it. I think it's not, I think right now what we have to have is a cleansing out of Congress, and not just, and without caring about, if they're a socialist or a libertarian, right? I think we have to throw those labels aside for a bit and just say, we just need honest people in there. We just need people who aren't going to be taking a bunch of donor money, people who are actually going to work on behalf of their constituents, on behalf of Americans, right? That's the government that we need. But instead we end up with this totally bought off. And one of the problems with Congress is they have to run every 2 years. So it's like constant campaigning. Like once you're in, you're still campaigning. When I look at AOC, I worry that, what happened with her was that the establishment got to her and said, look, you've got this big idea. You want the Green New Deal, right? This is like your baby. So you want this thing to actually have any legs, then you need to play ball with us on everything else. Otherwise, you're going to have absolutely zero power. You're going to be just cut out from every single committee. You're going to be cut out from, we're just not going to allow you to, and we're going to campaign hard against you. We're going to win, right? They could say all those things. Because I don't know if AOC takes big donor money. I don't think she does, actually, still. But I'm not, do you know if she does or not?
No, actually, she's one of the few people in Congress who are very honest as to where they get their money. I mean, what it is so if you're a Democrat, which she is, and Bowman is too, what that gives you is an access to a network of people who will donate to your campaigns, right? That does matter a lot more than the amount of money you get, because if you can get 10,000 people giving you $10 a month, right? That's pretty good, right? Because then that's $100,000 a month, and that's the network you get access to when you run as a party candidate, Democrat or Republican.
Yeah, I mean, you get all the purse of the DCCC also. So you don't even have. So even if you yourself don't take big money, the DCCC does, and then they give you some money. So it's not like direct donors directly from various different organizations or corporations or whatever. Okay, let's kind of break down your campaign a little bit. So you're running as an independent, right?
Yes.
So you're clearly not a Republican, not a Democrat. Do you feel like you lean one side more than the other?
No, God, no. And I am very proud of that, and I'm very happy of that, because I get this a lot. You talk to one, if I talk to Republicans, they say, you sound too socialist for me. And you talk to leftists, they tell me, you sound too conservative for me. The thing is, it's what you said. We need to abandon labels, and we just need to get people who are honest, right, and empathetic. You know what should qualify someone for office? Angela McArdle, she's the chair of the Libertarian Party.
Yeah.
I disagree wholeheartedly with everything that woman has to say on economics. You know what she's motivated by? What is going to make her kids' future better? And what kind of government do I need to make sure that my grandkids can have a better future than me? That woman should be a senator just on that alone. And then her and I can fight on like economics and stuff. But see, that's a government people can trust right there, because that's a government the citizenry can look at and say, well, you know what? I disagree with, so-and-so from another state, but shit, I can trust that that person actually has my best interests. Maybe we disagree on how to get there. Whereas right now, there is no disagreement on anything. They agree on pretty much every policy that kills American citizens and kills people abroad. They don't care that you have a uniparty.
Yeah, we do have a uniparty because they're bought off by the same people, because it's really smart of those big industries to buy them all off. I mean, why buy off one side when you can have them all?
Yeah.
Right? So you're running. So tell us about your district. So New York 15, the Bronx, that's what this is.
That's right, yeah.
How many seats represent the Bronx? Is AOC also in the Bronx?
Yes. And actually, they are redistricting again. In 9 days, we will have a new congressional map as to like how many people actually will represent the Bronx. Right now, AOC represents Hunts Point, Parkchester, and Soundview. So that's all of the East Bronx, and a little bit of the South Bronx. Richie Torres represents the entire South Bronx and Riverdale. Riverdale is the bougier, more expensive part of the Bronx. It's kind of like an L. So it goes all the way in the south and then up, Tale of Two Cities. Then you have Adriano Espaillat, who has tiny chunks of the Bronx. And then you have Jamal Bowman, who's up in Gun Hill Road, Co-op City, and then starts going into Westchester County. Those are the four congressmen.
So 4 represent the Bronx. What happens after they redistrict, do you know?
Well, yeah. So we have to look at the lines and see again on the maps. Because with the last redistricting, so they've redistricted 3 times because the Republicans keep throwing out the map saying that there's gerrymandering going on. There is gerrymandering going on. The Democrats are gerrymandering. So in the last map, AOC did not have a lot of the Bronx like she does right now, right? They gave her way more of the Bronx. They gave her Hunts Point. And so, I don't know what the maps are going to look like in 9 days. It could radically change everything, or they could hardly move the lines at all. So we'll see.
Okay. You don't think they're going to district out? They're not going to like draw out that and like eliminate Richie Torres' seat entirely, which then makes it to where you can't even challenge him or what?
It's possible because like the street I live on one side of the street is Richie Torres and you cross the street, that's AOC. So but the beautiful thing about New York is that you don't have to live in the district to run for the district. You only have to move there until after you win. So I could have ran against Hakeem Jeffries down in Brooklyn if I wanted to.
Oh, interesting. So you could go for any seat.
In New York State, yeah.
In the whole state, as long as can you live outside of New York at the time of your running? I think Hillary Clinton did that, right? I mean, is that how she became a senator? That's a
good question. I don't know if you can live outside, but I'm just saying, Kim, if you want to run for governor, if you want to run for governor of New York, I mean, I'll help you do it. I don't care where you are.
Oh, wow. That's interesting that they do it that way. Okay. So you're up against a deadline. So what happens in April? So you have to collect a certain amount of signatures because you're running as an independent. So in order to get on the ballot, it's not as straightforward. Or tell us about the process.
Yeah, no. So I can tell you about the process because in 2022, I helped Diane Sayre run for U.S. Senate against Chuck Schumer as an independent. And she's doing it again this year, only she's running against Kirsten Gillibrand. And in New York State, if you want to be on the ballot as an independent, right, as an unaffiliated party, not a Democrat or Republican or Working Families Party, you need to have as a statewide candidate. So this is for Diane, who's running for U.S. Senate. I'm only a district candidate, but for her, you need 45,000 signatures a minimum, right? And you can only collect those signatures in a designated 6-week period, right? Right. Think about that, right? We can't start now. We have to actually wait until midnight, April 16th. And you have until May 31st to get 45,000 signatures. I don't know if you've ever done any petitioning, Kim. Maybe some of your viewers have.
Yeah.
So 45,000 signatures is not enough to get you on because there's something called challenging. Right. The opposition is allowed to look at your signatures and say, I can't read that handwriting. Boom. Scratch that one off. You're out. That means minimally, you need double the number of signatures, which is like 80,000, 90,000. Ideally, triple. Now, for me, running in the Bronx, in the district that I'm in, I need 3,500 signatures, right? But these have to be people who are eligible to vote. These have to be people who live in the district in order for the signature to count. What makes that difficult is that a lot of people in the Bronx don't vote, right? A lot of people in the Bronx don't vote, are not eligible, or may not be eligible to vote, don't remember when the last time it is they voted, right? And so they can look at all this and say, yeah, no, this kid has all these signatures, but none of them are good, which means our campaign needs at minimum 10,500 signatures, right? So we need 10,500 signatures, and Diane needs at least 90,000 signatures, because we were the only ones. The Libertarians couldn't do it, and the Green Party couldn't do it back in 2022 to get on the ballot as independents.
Wow.
We were the only ones, right?
Wow.
You know, yeah, it's true. So when in New York in 2022, people saw Democrat, Republican, and then LaRouche line. Those are the three choices for U.S. Senator. And so we're coming back this year again, but we're going to need volunteers. We're going to need boots on the ground. I'm going to need stuff like a flatbed truck. You know, if people can donate so we can rent a flatbed truck so I can go around spreading my message, or if people have flatbed trucks and they want to link up with my campaign, please, they should actually, you know, contact me and reach out.
Have you done the math on this? So 6 weeks to collect how you need 10,000 signatures, you said, in 6 weeks?
For me, yeah.
Yeah. So how many realistically does one person gather in 6 weeks?
Good. That's a very good question, because people think they can do more than what I'm about to tell you.
Yeah.
2022, I was out every day, 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. 100 signatures a day.
100
One
a day
individual.
per
Mhm.
person.
That is considered gold standard, like you're on your game, because people don't realize how difficult it is to stand in the middle of the street, right? Telling, can you sign my petition? Can you sign my petition? And people don't give a fuck about you, right?
Right.
So
Right.
you have to like develop some kind of creative technique or something. You have to, and I only took 3 days off those entire 6 weeks. I only had 3 days off. I was getting up 6 a.m., 5 p.m. every single day, only getting 100 signatures. So if we're going by that math, we need minimally 100 people, right? 100 people. And I'm not even going to pressure them all to get 100 signatures, because I know how much hard work that is. It really is a lot of hard work.
Right.
So,
That would be 100 people working 8-hour days every day, or maybe just taking a few days off.
Well, what I would like is to, if we could do 100 people every day, or at least for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And they get 50 signatures. So they're not super pressured, right? That's 5,000 signatures a day. Ideally, we could knock it out in a week.
Yeah,
That's
right.
ideal.
Okay.
But I don't know, you know, because things can change. But I would like 100 people in the Bronx, because the other thing is clerking. I have really bad handwriting. And Diane's team would call me and say, your handwriting sucks. We're going to throw out your petitions if you don't get better handwriting. So I had to get better handwriting. You know, it's
Why do you need, for what? What are you filling out?
Well, okay. So when you're out petitioning, you need to get the person's name and address, and then they need to sign it, right?
Oh,
so
okay.
the reason why we're allowed to fill out, we can print their name and we can print their address, but the thing is, they have to sign, of course, right? And that's the thing, they have to sign. And the reason we're allowed to print the name and address is because sometimes people have really sloppy handwriting.
Right.
You have to be able to make sure that the Board of Elections can vet the address that you're saying. So, yeah.
But how do you do that on the fly when you're out there? So because you'd have to print the piece of paper for them with their name and their address, and then they sign it right then and there, or can you do it a different
So
way?
you have a sheet, and it's like columns: name, address. That's it, right? So then they sign their name, and they can also print their name if they want. But then we ask them, like, what's your address? And then, you know,
Right, right.
Yeah.
Oh, but I thought you meant typing it, like you could type it so that it's like
No.
printed. You mean you have to hand print?
Hand print. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Oh boy,
It's a lot of work.
I have bad handwriting too. I feel like anybody under a certain age, almost everybody under a certain age, has bad handwriting because of typing and texting.
That's right. That's true.
We stop using, you know, we don't, the muscle memory. We just don't use. I used to have nice handwriting, and now my handwriting is like illegible because I type and text everything. So.
But the point I would want to make on the petitioning is that these are insane requirements. These are literally insane requirements. You know why? Because the Democrats and Republicans, if they want to be on the ballot, They only need, if you're a statewide candidate, they only need 15,000 signatures compared to independents who need 45,000 signatures.
Why in
If
the
you want to
world?
be, Richie Torres, if some Democrat wanted to challenge Richie Torres, that person would only need 1,500 signatures compared to my 3,500 signatures. Think
Why
about
is
that, right?
it that way? Who made those rules? Democrats, right?
It was
In the state.
Cuomo. It was Cuomo before he left. Cuomo was pissed off at the Working Families Party and said, you know what? I'm going to make it difficult for independents to get on the ballot. So he snuck it in some budget bill that they passed. So it wasn't even voted on. It was just put in a budget bill like, oh, yeah, and we're going to raise the voting requirements, the ballot
Wow.
requirements too. And it
What a
passed.
scoundrel. Is that because of Cynthia Nixon, who was
Um,
challenging him? Was she with the
uh,
Workers' Party? Was that the party
I
that she
believe
ran in, or
I believe that's
it
the
might have
case.
been?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because and then the scandal broke out about him, and the Working Families Party turned their back on him. So he said, "I'm going to make it harder," and then they ended
Wow.
up endorsing him anyway on the line.
Right, right. Oh man.
Yeah,
And all of these signatures have to be people in that district, in New York's District 15.
that's correct. Yes, unless they're because Diane and I are going to be working together, right? So any signatures I can get will probably count for her as well.
Okay.
New York State has this thing called fusion ballot lines. Since her and I are running on the same line, which right now is the LaRouche line, any signatures I get should be able to count for her as well. So my 10,000 can go towards her pool that she needs for
That she
90,000.
needs. Okay. And
Yeah.
LaRouche line, when you say that, is that a political party?
No, we see. So you're technically not allowed to be an independent in New York. You have to have a party. I know, right? We wanted to be just like, why can't we just have our names on the ballot? You need a party, and so you have to create a party when it comes to getting on the ballot as an independent in New York State. You're legally not allowed to be unaffiliated. So we said, okay, well, if we have to have a party name, let's just go with LaRouche.
So you just have to, an independent, all the independents that run in New York have to just kind of make up a party.
Yeah, that's why they go for libertarian or green, because those are the second major
It's
third
easier, yeah.
parties. Yeah, right. Or Working Families Party too. But they always end up, but that's the thing, right? Because the Working Families Party will always end up endorsing the Democrat because in order to maintain ballot status. So in other words, if Diane and I want to not have to petition again, we would have to first of all run someone for governor. And then secondly, that person who we ran for governor would need to get at least 5% of the votes to stay as a party. So the Working Families Party, to keep their ballot status, they end up endorsing the Democrats so they don't lose their line on the ballot.
Crafty, clever, I suppose, but really ridiculous at the same
Oh,
time.
yeah.
Totally ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. And we haven't even talked about are we on YouTube too? Can I say electric frogs on here?
Yeah, actually, they changed the rules. We are not, but you can. But they have changed the rules, and you can talk about election fraud now.
Okay.
I mean, for the longest time, you couldn't talk about that on YouTube, but now and the reason, of course, they changed the rules is probably because they're gonna, when Donald Trump wins the presidency, they're gonna say, "Oh, it was election fraud."
Yeah,
They wanna
right.
so they want to be able to talk about it when he wins, and they can accuse Republicans of election or Russians of election fraud or something, but they don't want it to happen in reverse.
Yeah,
Which tells you something.
Diana and I sat down with a former elected state official. I can't say whom, but somebody who's like a prominent Democrat. And he told me, hey, you should have ran as a Democrat against Richie Torres. And I said, do you honestly think I would have been allowed to win with an honest vote? And he said to me, well, I was there on election night. I won't tell you what year, when I saw the Board of Elections take the voting machines, take them to the Board of Elections building, lock up the building, and just start switching votes. And I was like, "Are you serious?" And he just like starts telling me like so many nightmare things that he has witnessed himself. Like, you got to come out publicly with this. And he said, I can't say this publicly, but I'll put it in my book," is what he said.
Oh, I'll put it in my book. Well, when you think about a lot of the people that decide to volunteer for that type of role in an election, these are people that are passionate, right? Typically, you're not going to get the people that are kind of neutral on politics or kind of like, well, whoever wins, wins. You get the people who are really passionate. They're politically minded. And so I think when they feel that it's a existential crisis, an existential threat, and they have to do something to stop this terrible, they're willing to, I think, I think they're much easier to be corrupted and do things like that. I have no doubt
course.
that, I mean, since the fact that we weren't even able to talk about everything was censored, talking about any sort of election interference or meddling of any kind, the fact that they wouldn't allow us to talk about it just tells you right there that it happened, because otherwise
Yeah,
they'd let us talk about it. They don't let
that's
us
right.
talk about the things that, that's when they shut us down. They shut us down when it's true.
That's right. No, that's right. And I think that apparatus is something that you get exposed to when you go into the Congress and into the government as a one of the two parties. AOC and this Republican Congressman Madison Cawthorn. Was that his name? The guy who's on a wheelchair who,
Yeah, Madison, Cawthorn or Crawthorn. Yeah, right.
right? So here's why they're actually the same, but they went into two different paths on how they dealt with it. Because this Madison guy, he goes into the Congress, he's like, why are people offering me blow and hookers? What is going on? Like
Right.
I I thought this was the U.S. Congress, right? And so his reaction was honest, and because he blew the whistle on it, they kicked him out. They primaried him out. They used all the blackmail they had on him, and they stomped him out of Congress. Whereas AOC, no doubt, saw the same thing, swallowed it up, and
Yeah.
said, okay, I need to be tough. I need to swallow this. I need to play this game, because I do believe she was honest at some point. And maybe to some extent, she believes she is still honest. But I know that somewhere in the back of her mind and the rest of the squad, there is something there that is itching at them and killing them and saying what I'm doing is not right. I'm making too many moral concessions. I'm making too many concessions on my principles. At what point? Now look at the mess we're in. I've been in office for 2-3 terms now, and I have not done anything to change anything. And the only thing I've been worried about is making sure I can still keep this status as a Look at what she's doing. She's endorsing Biden right now. She's
Yeah.
endorsing Biden right now while denouncing the genocide in Gaza. That's like endorsing Hitler and saying, I don't agree with burning the Jews at all. But I think he is a strong president, though. He's a strong leader, because
Yeah.
that's DNC games. Those are the kind of games she thinks she has to play in order to make some kind of impact or change in
Yeah.
her community or in the country.
I think I think the way that they got to them, because it isn't through the big donors, it's through something else. For one, the fame. I think the fame has gotten to her. She likes being famous. She likes being a huge celebrity, one of the biggest politicians in America. But at the same time, I also think that the way they got him in the beginning was the play on, look, you've got this one pet project you really want. So just go along with everything else so that your pet project can make some progress. And she watched, Nancy Pelosi kind of had the same sort of, throughout her career, she really cared about some particular, I think it was something about kids, that it was like her like, you know, champion cause. And I think they just throw everything away for that. But I really actually think fame more than anything. I think fame, the luster of being the spotlight, being a huge celebrity, being invited to all the parties. You don't need big donors to swoop you up every time. It can also just be the power and the fame that goes along with being a politician like that. That's what I
Sure.
think, that the
I
squad is latched onto that because they're all connected to that same power and fame that AOC's carrying them through with, and they're all into that. We need to take a little bit of a break here and go to a sponsor, but we're talking to Jose Vega. He is running for Congress against Richie Torres, the big, huge Zionist shill, one of the biggest Zionist shills, it turns out, in Congress, in the Bronx, New York 15, District 15. Jose, before we take a break, what is the website for your campaign?
My website is votevega.nyc. Votevega.nyc. People can donate or sign up to volunteer. We really could use the donations. We don't take big corporate money, and we need to prove to people that, people can overcome corporations. People can overcome big super PACs and donors.
Okay, so let's take a break and we'll be right back with Jose Vega. Let me guess, your medicine cabinet is crammed with stuff that doesn't work. You still aren't sleeping, you still hurt, and you're stressed out. That's how it was for me. So I cleared out my cabinet and reset my health with CBD from CB Distillery. And it's been a real change. CB Distillery's targeted formulations are made from the highest quality, clean ingredients, no fluff, no fillers, just pure, effective CBD solutions designed to help support your health. In 2 non-clinical surveys, 81% of customers experienced more calm. 80% said CBD helped with pain after physical activity. And an impressive 90% said they slept better with CBD. So if you struggle with a health concern and haven't found relief, make the change like I did to CB Distillery. And with over 2 million customers and a solid 100% money back guarantee, CB Distillery is the source to trust. And I have a 20% discount to get you started. Visit cbdistillery.com and use code Kim for 20% off. That's cbdistillery.com, code Kim, cbdistillery.com. Let's talk about your actual platform. Like, what do you stand for? So you said that some people on the right say you're a socialist and people on the left say you're a conservative. You were a Bernie Sanders voter who voted for Trump. So,
well, don't put it that way.
well, but a lot of people, and for me, I never voted for Trump, but this time, I probably will. This will be the one time that, because I just cannot, I just really, I think it's more about, I'm interested in seeing him blow things up in there. I like that he's kind of like a walking time bomb. Nobody knows which way he's going to go. He's uncontrollable completely. And I just like the fear that he instills in the establishment, clearly, because they keep going after him over and over and over again. So I'm like, well, hey, more of the same, or we could choose this Molotov cocktail and see what happens, this time around. So tell us about your platform. So so you say you don't agree with the Libertarian Party on economics. Are you a socialist?
No,
Are you a Marxist?
I am not a socialist. I am not a Marxist. I am not a libertarian. I am an American patriot who believes in Hamiltonian economics and LaRouche's methods of economics.
What is that?
Well, this book here, Earth's Next 50 Years by Lyndon LaRouche, has really outlined for me the policy that, that is on my website and that I sent to you, the Space CCC policy. But I think my overall outlook on how I see government and the role of government is this. What is it that we can ensure that we need to do right now? What kind of policy do we need to orient so that the next 50 years of Earth can actually be something prosperous for people? In other words, don't you think it's a moral failure that the Bronx today is just as bad as it was in 1970, right? It's horrible today. There's been no real economic progress. But when the Wright brothers, made a plane in 1903, 50 years later, you had people working on aeronautic parts that were going to space. And then in 57, you had Sputnik. Then 10 years later, you had a man on the moon. Okay, I believe a man was on the moon. Maybe we can, I don't know whether we put someone on the goddamn moon. Now, excuse me. Now, what I believe, right, is that we need to, we at some point, not at some point, in the 70s, and actually after Kennedy was assassinated, there was this belief that there are too many people on the planet. This is when the overpopulation myth started coming out. There's too many people on the planet, right? So we need to have some kind of degrowth movement. We need to slow down our growth, or else the world's going to be overpopulated and there's going to be a tons of poverty and violence. And it's all bullshit, right? Because the policy you have right now is an anti-human, anti-development policy, right? Whereas opposed to, we have something called the Oasis Plan. This is something that Helga Zepp-LaRouche has put out at the Schiller Institute. And this idea that you need to, in order to stop the wars in the Middle East, what's needed is an actual development plan. You need to bring water to that region, desalinated water, actual infrastructure, roads, highways. You need to build high-speed rail in that region. You need to get that region developed so that you can build new cities in those regions, right? That's the same idea that existed in Kennedy's mind in 1962 and 63, right? It's like, how can you actually guarantee the survival of the human species if you're not always thinking ahead? In other words, how can I make sure that not just the Bronx, not just the country, but the world is a better place 50 years after I'm dead? Like, what contribution can I make right now? And what kind of policy can I make right now to make sure that the future is always better than it is today? That's my policy outlook. That's my governmental outlook. Is that socialism? Is that libertarianism? I don't think it matters. You cannot put that in a label. It's just human. That's just what I think a human being should do. And that's what the founding fathers believed in. Gouverneur Morris, who was a founding father, right? People don't know this name. It's a funny name, Gouverneur Morris. He's buried in the South Bronx. On 140th Street and St. Anne's Avenue, at St. Anne's Church, right? He penned the Constitution. He literally wrote out the Constitution, and he is the author of the preamble, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union." People quote these words all the time, and they have no fucking idea what it actually means. I'm sorry. I really need to work on that, Kim. These people. I might be in the government. I might, and it's like I need to. My point is, the founding fathers had a real conception that it is in posterity that you always think about, because you and I are temporary here. I've only got 50 years at best left on this planet. So how do I make sure
Hopefully longer than that? You're only 25, right? So
well,
let's hope another 75 years for you.
Well, I don't want to be like a Nancy Pelosi or a Dianne Feinstein.
Why not?
But, the founding fathers had this conception that it's in the future. The posterity is the only thing that we know is tangible. We know that there will always be a future. So how can we make sure that we are doing something right now for the future? And that's my policy outlook. That's why that's who I am. Can you put that in a box?
Let's break that down a little bit. So you're obviously anti-war.
Yes.
I think we got that. You
can't have a future if there's a nuclear, warheads going off.
So are you always anti-war? Are you ever for war? Is there any circumstance?
Oh, I almost did my horrible impression of Kennedy, of RFK Jr. Because I'm anti-war when I don't have to be anti-war, Look, I think yes, I would say yes, because every single war for the last 60 years has not been justified. I mean, the last justifiable world war was World War II, right?
Yeah.
That, I think, was probably the last example where it actually was justifiable. Every single war after that has been manipulated and provoked by the US, UK, and NATO forces, right? Trying to put their imperialist boot on there. Maybe we should get rid of those forces first. The imperialist forces that have hijacked the American government, that have hijacked the Constitution, okay? And get rid of them first, and then watch how many wars are actually start to disappear around the world, right? Yeah. I believe that the BRICS nations and this idea of there being a new Silken Road, and this was an idea that Lynn and Helga LaRouche had developed in the 90s, right? That you can actually have joint economic cooperation between countries that doesn't require fighting, right? But just actual real scientific development between countries, building nuclear plants, high-speed rail, bringing water to places that don't have water.
That's actually how you stay out of war, is when you partner with countries and you build each other up. That's how, those partnerships, and that's, it's funny that they don't even think like that, because they do think that way when it comes to like NATO. That's a partnership. They know it's a partnership, and they say this is a partnership that keeps us out of war, right? Well, what about all the other partnerships? Make more partnerships, not war, but base it on something else. Don't base it on, it's a defense pact. Base it on, it's a business pact. We're in business together. So we don't want to war with one another, because it's mutually beneficial for us all to exist.
That's exactly right. It's an irony, because like supposedly the more money you spend on war, it actually makes you less secure.
Yeah.
It makes you less secure.
Yeah.
Right. And, so I believe war is a thing of the past now, but we have to actually drive the stake at the heart that is the dying animal that is NATO. Because yes, even though it's quote unquote dying, as Scott Ritter likes to say, he's definitely right on this, the NATO and Western forces are dying. You know what an animal does when it starts dying? It starts to act irrational. Okay. Yeah. It will buck around. It will do as much damage as it can before it decides to kick the bucket. All right. These people are suicidal maniacs. Okay. They will launch a nuclear warhead if they thought they were going to lose any kind of power. That's the kind of forces we're up against right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think that they are desperate, and they've hit the empire's hit the point of desperation of, we're losing our grip on the world. Oh no, what do we do? And the only way we've ever been able to maintain that grip is by bullying, by being in everybody's face, being the bigger, badder military. And that doesn't work as much anymore, because there is a new form that it's old. You're right. It's antiquated. It's what less developed countries maybe go to war with one another now. But we're still doing it. We're still acting like, oh no, this is the way. And it's just really not the way. So you're anti-war.
Yes.
Now let's go to climate change. Where are you on with that?
Carbon-based climate change is an excuse to make sure that nothing can be developed or made, or any progress can be made. My favorite quote on this is Obama. He went to South Africa in 2014. He says, "Folks, I'm sorry, but you can't have air conditioner. The world's going to boil over." World's going to boil over, folks. We can't have that. Now I'm going to get on my private jet, in my air-conditioned jet. And this is a real thing. In 2014, he goes to South Africa and he tells South Africans they can't have cars or air conditioning because then the world's going to boil over. I mean, it's just a new form of imperialism. That's all it is, And
it's a new form of like keeping people down. It's like instead of using the military now, they're saying, okay, well, we just can't allow you to economically develop. Right?
Yes,
so
but
I have stay in the Stone Ages, Brazil. Yeah. Stay in the Stone Ages, Russia.
Or countries in Africa too, they do these things like carbon taxes, and the World Bank says we'll give you money, but you can only use it to develop inferior forms of energy. You cannot build an economy on windmills and solar panels. It's just bullshit, right? And but at the same time, I'm not against the debate. See, here's the thing, right? If you say what I just said, you're a climate denier. No one should listen to you. This guy's clearly insane. No. I think these things should be debated. I think these things should be, you should have town halls, you should have real dissenting opinions, and people should be allowed to form their own goddamn opinion as long as it's truthful and informed. Will Happer over in Princeton is really good on this stuff. That guy did atmospheric sciences. He invented a lot of the sciences that people still use today and reference today when it comes to the atmosphere. That guy knows what he's talking about, right? So I think the problem is that you have this censorship going on, not just online, but in academia too, where you can't even question the validity of, well, wait, what if the world does go up 2 degrees Celsius by year 2099? I mean, is that really as disastrous? How do we know? Right. So I'm just telling people there should be more scientific honesty and inquiry. That is ultimately what matters when it comes to trying to figure out what quote unquote climate change actually is about. Because the way I would take that question here in the Bronx is if some young kid comes up to me and says, well, what are you going to do about climate change? What are we going to do about the climate change on Mars? That's the thing, right? If we are talking about inhabiting Mars in the next 50 years, how do we actually build an atmosphere on Mars so that people can breathe on there without having to build some kind of dome? Can we actually terraform Mars and have an atmosphere on Mars, right, that is not just sucking in carbon? How do we actually bring an atmosphere to Mars? That's climate change science right there.
Okay, speaking of science, COVID, mandates, vaccines, where were you on all of that?
What do you want me to say? I'll say whatever you want me to say on this. Here's my honest answer on this. In the very beginning, I fell for the hysteria, as many people did too. And I had an experience where my grandfather had a stroke and we had to call the paramedics. And this was like April or May of 2020. I mean, like deep into the lockdowns. And they came in and they were like triple masked up and they had bubbles. And they told my mom and I, all right, you guys need to stand back 6 feet away. And then the paramedics themselves had like long arm things so that they could extend it to my grandfather who's there like dying on the fucking gurney, right? And so finally they put a giant bubble top over the gurney and then they say, okay, we're taking him to so-and-so hospital. I go to so-and-so hospital and I'm in this waiting room with like 20 other people who probably have COVID and they're turning people away. And I say, okay, look, I'd like to see my grandfather. He doesn't speak a lick of English. And they're like, no, I'm sorry. It's a COVID risk, right? I was pretty pissed off at that, right? Yeah. In retrospect, it definitely was like an overreaction, but it highlighted the real problem, which is that you don't have adequate healthcare here in the country. There was a standard developed in the 1930s called the Hill-Burton Standard, right? So in the 1930s, they said to have an effective healthcare system and a measure of it, you need to have 4.5 hospital beds for every 1,000 Americans. Today, we only have 2.3 hospital beds for every 1,000 Americans, right? This is all pre-COVID shit, right? Here in the United States, you don't have a good healthcare system. You have a death care system, right? So they never give you the medication you need to fully get you over something just to kind of keep you going and keep you alive. Or they give you all these psych medications, antidepressants, SSRIs, right? To make sure that you never really die, but they can suck and leech all the money off the system that they can. So the vaccine question and the vaccine issue, when Russia had developed the first vaccine, I was pretty optimistic about it. And I trusted that more than I did the US vaccine, but I am double vaxxed, but I never got the booster. And I think now maybe you could have just limited it to the elderly and the immunocompromised, because I know people who were elderly and immunocompromised who have died from COVID. And if
Yeah.
if they had taken the vaccine before it had come out, they might still be here today. But somebody like me, or any young, healthy adult, probably didn't need the vaccine.
Immigration. New York is being hit hard with this. This is a lot of these migrants coming in are then getting it to the border. They're being put on flights, and many of them are coming to New York. What is
I know.
your what are you thinking about immigration?
Well, first, I'd like to dispel the myth that the immigrants who are coming here are living rosy, lavish lifestyles, and they are in these hotels, these 5-star hotels. But I know people who are working in these places that are, kind of like acting as the social workers for these people.
Mm,
Every day they come in, they dread the work because they are getting reports of domestic abuse. A lot of those women are prostituting themselves. The men who try to do any kind of honest work have to buy IDs from American citizens so they can do Uber Eats, because you need to be a citizen to do Uber Eats, or they're doing some kind of illegal things. There's a lot of violence going on in those places. People are huddled into rooms, rooms that only have 2-3 beds in them. There's like 5, 6, 7, 8 people. Now, that being said, New York City was already a shithole before the immigrants came in. New York City was always been collapsing and falling apart. The immigrants were just another kind of like block to stack on top of that. Look, I think we need to think humanely here, and we need to also recognize that the reason why you have this problem is because the United States has destabilized. We've couped, we've killed leaders, right? We have destabilized all of Central and South America, essentially, pretty much. And President Bukele down in El Salvador has said, I'm not going to take this anymore, right? And so he's fixed up his country, and now you have a giant diaspora that's coming back to El Salvador.
yeah.
Overall, I think my plan, the Space CCC issue and the Oasis plan, will actually solve the immigration problem. AOC was actually right on this when she said that in the 1890s and the early 1900s, we had way more immigrants coming into New York City. But the difference is that was a New York City that was productive, building things. You could actually get training and get a real construction job, work at the docks, and your rent also wasn't super expensive, right? Now you have an unproductive New York City. Things are collapsing and falling apart. There are parts of the Bronx you can't tell if it's Gaza or the Bronx, right? Under my plan, under a Space CCC policy, if you have a national plan and you say, okay, our roads are terrible, our highways are falling apart, our energy grid does not meet the standards that it needs. If you really map out everything the country needs in terms of repair right now, and then you talk about building like nuclear energy or advanced forms of power, you're going to look and you're going to realize, like, holy shit, we don't have enough citizens who are trained to actually build everything the country needs just to bring it to the late 20th century.
Right.
And then you're going to be begging immigrants to come back and say, listen, we need to build more cities. We need to build more, energy. We need to build a lot more infrastructure. We will train you. Just come here so we can get some hands and start rebuilding cities and building new cities.
Yeah. We've become a land of sloths, right? So that's why we've got in the immigration, the migrant problem. We do have sex trafficking and drugs, and it's because that's what people are partaking in. I mean, if there wasn't an industry here in the United States for that, if there wasn't a demand for it, then they wouldn't be able to import that in. But they're able to bring in the drugs because Americans buy the drugs. They're able to bring in the sex trafficking because Americans are buying it. So that's what we're doing. So if we just change our culture, like you mentioned, if we start building things, we start being productive, we've got people that actually have meaning and a job, and they can actually buy a home with that. When I was a kid growing up, my family, I had a blue collar family, and my uncles were they had my aunts were stay-at-home wives raising the 3 children. My uncles were working in blue collar jobs, and they were able to support a stay-at-home wife and 3 kids and buy a single family home. Can't do that anymore today as a blue collar worker. And even with 2 blue collar workers, both people working, it's still nearly impossible to live that sort of American dream. So if we do build that back, I do think you're right on that if we really mapped it out, we'd find we got a lot of work actually for people. We don't need to rely on Elon Musk's AI robots.
Yes, exactly.
To come forward and start building things. Interesting. Okay.
Well, that's the difference between my plan with the Space CCC. And
What
just
does that
explain.
stand for? You keep saying Space CCC. What is that?
Okay, so the original CCC was back in the 1930s. FDR pulled us out of a Great Depression, and he started what he called the Civilian Conservation Corps,
Okay.
CCC, right?
Uh,
And so this was young men between the ages of 18 and 26 who were unemployed, uneducated, illiterate, had all kinds of problems. And they put them in work camps to get training on how to, first of all, plant trees, but also do basic infrastructure repairs. They built a lot of roads and bridges, and they planted over 3.5 million, or I think billion, trees. They're responsible for a lot of the national parks that we have here in the United States.
mm,
And I'm saying you have a problem right now where a lot of young people are graduating high school who can't read a book. I mean
right.
it. Here in New York State, the kids have to take something called the Regents exam. It's like a statewide exam. Only 50% of them actually pass the English Regents, and they still graduate them out of high school anyway, right?
Yeah.
So you have illiterate kids, you have uneducated kids, you have unskilled kids, right? And you also have a collapsing country and a collapsing city. This is the Bronx in New York City, okay? What you do is you need to have new camps, where you get these unemployed youth, young men or women, I don't discriminate now, and you put them in these camps and you say, look, you're going to learn welding, you're going to learn engineering, you're going to learn carpentry, you're also going to learn how to read, and you're going to have a real cultural education as well, because you have to understand what it means to be a human being. And classical literature, classical art is the quickest way to understand that. So you give them this education based in classical literature and classical art, as well as giving them the practical skills they need to build things. And then you say, okay, listen, we paid for your training. We paid your family because we took you away for 2 years. You're going to go back to your community. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to build a hospital. You're going to build a school. You're going to fix those damn roads. You're going to fix the subway system. You're going to build power plants, right? And you're going to build new cities that are adjacent to the cities that you already live in. And you're going to do that for 2 years. And then after that, you can decide to keep working with us on more national projects, or you can go market yourself now.
Yeah.
Damn, I
'Cause
just
you have
learned how to be
skills.
you have
Right.
skills, right? It's the American dream. So,
That's a great plan. Because right now the only option for kids is to go to the military, right? I mean, if they're in that situation where they didn't grad, maybe they dropped out, or they didn't gain the skills necessary to go off to college. They don't want to go to college. They don't want to waste a bunch of money, taking out a bunch of student loans and getting into a bunch of debt, right? And you see a lot of politicians talking about it now. If we need to have, we need skills, people going in, and instead of learning, about gender studies in college, they should be
Yeah.
learning how to actually do something. And so sounds like a great plan. I mean, we should have these national programs where these kids, we just say, look, you got nothing to do and you're committing crime, right?
Yep.
You're out there committing crime. So you instead, because you're at that age, I mean, we know that crime, especially young men between the ages of like 14 and 22, they're like really at that age, they could get into a lot of trouble. And
Yep.
so getting them out of that cycle of trouble, like what we're seeing throughout our major cities, the looting and that carjackings and the flash mobs, right? All of those types of things that we're seeing would probably go away if we had an option for these young kids other than become a criminal in order to make money or go to the military, which a lot of them don't want to do.
Exactly. That's why the Space CCC camps,
Why
one of the things,
space? Why
oh,
space?
because it's a focus on modernizing the engineering techniques. The kind of practical skills have to be brought to the standard of like that any one of these kids could go on to work at NASA or be an aeronautical engineer or something, right? Because the idea is you always have to keep moving forward and developing. You know what the most profitable thing was in the 1960s? It wasn't war. It was the Apollo space program.
Yeah.
It employed hundreds of thousands of people, millions, I think. For every dollar we put into the Apollo space program, we got $10 back, right? Did we get all that back in what? Did we put ads on the moon or holograms on the moon? No, right? It was through development of technology, of advanced technology that was discovered and invented for the purpose of getting man on the moon, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reason why we have these things today is because of the fact that we put a man on the moon. The reason you and I can talk the way we do is because of a man on the moon, right? So if you have these
the process of trying to get the man on the moon, we're gonna have to.
No, we're not doing
we're
that.
Gonna have to, yeah.
We're
I could do a whole show on that, and I will at some point.
You got to have me back on. You got, if you do
we
that,
can
have
have a
me back
conversation
on.
about that. The evidence is flimsy at best.
No, it's not.
It's so flimsy. It is
Okay.
so flimsy. It's so
But
flimsy.
well, you know what? I'll tell you what. Okay, I'll tell you what. Even if we didn't put a man on the moon, if you put me in Congress,
The trying, I think, developed a lot of science for sure. I don't think it was like a wasted.
If you put me in the Congress, I will be damn sure we do put a man on the moon again. All right.
They keep talking about that, by the way. That's another sign that, maybe it wasn't. Here I am. I'm trying to live stream from Los Angeles. I don't know how they were able to live stream in the 1960s from the moon. Like, give me a break. I could barely do it here.
I didn't prepare. I didn't prepare to defend the Apollo program on this. All right. You have to.
I don't listen. I know a lot of, and people could call me a whack job. This is like the one conspiracy theory that I really am like, out of all of them. It's the one that I look at all the evidence, but I'm a real evidence-based person. I look at all the evidence and you just happen to lose the tapes. But the most important, like accomplishment of mankind, and you don't have the tapes. Okay.
Yeah.
Suddenly you lost them. Why?
I understand. I understand. And but the biggest
moon rocks, by the way, and the moon rocks that are, this is totally getting off topic. People are watching and be like, Kim's a crazy, whatever. Look, the moon rocks, and you can look this up. They would give these moon rocks to like ambassadors of other countries, being like, oh, look, here's a moon rock. And then they've now tested those moon rocks, and they're like, not even moon rocks.
I heard about this story. I need to look into it. I'm going to give you this though, Kim, because like, it's like, well, if we went, why did we not go back? Right. Because
then there's that. We haven't been back. And then you've got the program now, and they're saying, oh yeah, we're totally going to put a man on the moon again. They have to, again.
But the Artemis program is one of the things that I was happy about with Trump, is that he started the Artemis program again, which is the twin sister of Apollo. That's why they got that name. We're saying we're going to go back to the moon, folks. We're doing it. We're going to the moon, and China's not going to go there. We're going to go there. That's his whole thing. And I was happy with that, because I'm like, yes.
No one else gone to the moon. No one's been to the moon. Just the United States. So happens it's just us. And then they say, well, the excuse is, it's always some stupid excuse. The excuse is, well, it's because we already did it, so nobody else needed to. And it's like, oh, right. So we develop a TV, so no one else needs to build one. We develop a cell phone, so nobody else needs to build one. We developed a nuclear weapon, so nobody else needs to build one.
Kim, there's somebody in the Bronx right now. I don't know this person, but I know that there's somebody in the Bronx, or even in the country right now, that's looking at their telescope, at night, and wondering what the hell is out there. They want to understand space, right? They do. There is an intrinsic value, and there's an intrinsic something, a drive in human beings, that we want to know how the stars work and the cosmos work.
For sure.
And I want to make sure that young man or woman can go up to the moon and look at the stars through their telescope on the far side of the moon, away from any kind of interference, so we can look deeper and we can get better readings. That's my dream. I want there to be some kind of base on the moon, because here's my dream. Okay, picture this in your mind. It's 2095. Okay, on Earth, I'm dead. I've been dead, or maybe I'm in the wheelchair or something, and I'm still in Congress.
Well, with the new tech that they've developed.
Yeah, right. Okay, so it's 2095, right? I'm in a wheelchair somewhere, and there's somebody waiting at some kind of space station, and they're looking at their watch and like, God damn it, the fucking rocket's late again. Jesus Christ, when are we going to fix the rocket system to the moon? And they're only going to get there in like 2 or 3. Like, the way we complain about a delay in the subway system today is the way somebody will be complaining about the moon system, shuttling them back and from Earth and moon, okay, in the year 2095. That's what the hell that I think that is my goal, okay? That is what I want, right? And by that point in life, nobody will be hungry, nobody will be unhoused, nobody will be unclothed, and poverty will be something people study in like history books. Okay, because there's a fucking moral failure, all right, that 60 years after Kennedy is shot and killed, you still have people who don't have clean water in Flint, Michigan. It is completely freaking absurd. It is a moral failure. Our government has failed and collapsed, and we are like 4 years away from 250 years of the founding of this country, right? What do we have to show for it? Yeah. Not even 250 years since the founding of this country, and it sucks. Can I honestly look at George Washington, whose birthday is today, and tell him like, hey, don't worry, man, we held up your legacy. It's cool. We did it. No, it's an embarrassment. How does the world look at us? because there are other people around the world who are deeply inspired by what America stood for, because America was a global mission. People don't know this. America was founded by people who came from other countries, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and many of them African too, okay? By towards the end of the American Revolution, 1 in every 5 soldiers were black. People don't know that, right? This was a truly universal process, right? This is a world process. America is the culmination of world history, okay? This is not just belongs to one group of people or one race of people. This is the world's project. This is humanity's project. And I'm just so embarrassed. I'm ashamed that we're coming up on 250 years, and I look at my government and I say, what the fuck has become of this? You know, where is America? This is not the America that I know. It's been hijacked, and people need to elect themselves to take it back.
Well, Jose, you are a very interesting person, which I discovered when I was preparing to talk to you, and I watched the Ruckus documentary about you, Ruckus, the making of a revolutionary. And I thought, okay, let's, check this out. And I was surprisingly engaged the entire time, like thinking, oh, well, this is this is a really interesting documentary about you, actually. So I hope that people do watch that. I'll have that link down below. I mean, you're a very interesting person. You have a good idea. I mean, look, I think that rather than a space force, I like your space CCC that helps people develop the skills. And if we do focus on that, I think you're right. If we focus on, let's get to the moon, let's get to Mars, let's do more tech and develop more tech rather than let's do more war to keep other countries down so that we can remain big and strong. Why don't we just actually make ourselves big and strong, right? Make ourselves advanced rather than keeping others down. The technology that gets developed in that process for sure benefits us in so many other ways. I mean, if we're building a rocket to the moon, we're building faster airplanes here on Earth, right? We're doing better rail system, better energy systems. If we're trying to figure out how to cultivate vegetation on Mars, we should be able to cultivate vegetation in droughts here in the world. We should be able to stop famine here on Earth if we're thinking about doing vegetation and tilling soil on Mars, right? So I think you're right in that, and I like that, and I hadn't heard this before, so this is a unique thing for you, that the idea of if we just go back to really truly developing, and even in tech, in space, like thinking about space, thinking about the new frontier, that it will develop a lot of jobs, a lot of skills, and a lot of advancement for humans on Earth. So I think that's really brilliant.
That's right. Yeah, Dr. King, he was actually against the Apollo project in the beginning, and he was invited to go and visit NASA headquarters. I think it was in Langley. And when he saw that many employees were, young, up and coming, lots of them were black, and he saw that hundreds of thousands of people were employed on this and that they were training people on how to do this, he completely changed his mind and said, no, this is really important. And I think it was Bobby Seale. It was a prominent Black Panther member who worked on one of the Orion projects, who actually worked in, space and aeronautical engineering. I look at those guys as examples of combining tech and social change as being one and the same. Technological progress is social change, is a benefit for mankind. You hit the nail on the head. Exactly right. So, yeah.
Man on the moon or not, the development of the tech.
There was a man on the moon.
Okay. Hey, look, there may have been. I'm not like saying that there definitely wasn't. I'm just saying I haven't seen the actual real hardcore evidence for me to be persuaded to believe, because there's just too many coincidences. It's like the Epstein, like he just happened to have this and then there just happened to be this, and it's like that.
Yeah,
With
sure.
So anyway, but I'll let somebody else. I've been meaning to do a show on that. I'm kind of wondering like how well will that go over, because who was it? There was like a basketball player, I want to say 10 years ago, and he said, I don't believe in the moon landing. And it was like, people went, the media went crazy. I mean, I think they discussed like suspending him from playing
Oh
basketball
my God.
because he was like, I don't believe it. And then he had to come back and be like, no, there totally was a man on the man. And it was just one of those things where they've censored it so hard. Again, if they censor it, there's got to be some questions about it. Like maybe the whole truth isn't exactly what they claim, but yeah, I've been meaning to do a whole show on it. I think I'll get you the people I've talked to on it about it. There's what you do. Here's what you do. Anybody watching, this is what I've done. I go online and I search for evidence there was a man on the moon. So I try to get to the sites where they're debunking the person. They debunk people like not myself, but others who are really, really
sure.
fiercely like there never was a man on the moon. And when you read their evidence of like, yes, there was because A, B, C, D, you're like, that's not real evidence. None of this is real evidence. So you got to do more. Like, where are the tapes? Where are the damn tapes? Anyway,
do a show. Do a show on it because I know somebody who would be perfect. Like, you get your most skeptical, hard-headed person. I'll get my guy. All right,
okay.
Somebody who is like the science
right,
policy
and they can
advisor.
Talk. Yeah, okay.
But that's the important
I'd be totally
thing
willing
too.
to do that.
Okay, all right, good. Then I got you.
I don't want to be in it because I'm not the expert on this. I just look at the evidence and I'm like, I don't know, guys. It doesn't really look totally legit. So I just need a bit more. The type of person I am, I just need a little bit more evidence than that.
But but don't stop there. Do one on climate change too.
Well, I think totally. Yeah,
get somebody who's super pro. We need to kill everyone so the Earth can live, and get somebody who's like, right. No. And we can help you find some people.
That'd be great. Yeah. Well, Jose, you are awesome. I hope, good luck to you. Where are you at on everything with, I know you need, so votevega.nyc, that link is down below. What do you need? You need money, you need volunteers. Tell me what you need.
Boots on the ground, people who are willing to come out and do something. In terms of money, we need probably another $45,000 just to pay people stuff like a stipend, like $15 a day, and reimbursing them on travel. Right. Oh, wow. Like that's $50,000 just to pay for that. Right. So that's like the bare minimum just to get the petitioning stuff. But also, I mean, I need stuff like, I got to get my poster printed. Oh, I don't know if we have that image available. The yellow one that says, the truth defies silence. Hopefully we can put it up here somewhere. The truth defies silence. Right. Vote Vega. I need that everywhere in the Bronx. I mean, I need stickers. I need posters. I need to be able to pay for this material. You know, so I do have to raise the funds for it, but ultimately I just need people who are willing to act and intervene. People say I have a loud mouth and that I do what I do and I intervene. If you want to support the country, if you want to support my campaign, do what I did. Intervene. I mean it. That is the number one way to support my campaign. Intervene and be a truth teller and elect yourself to intervene. Elect yourself. Don't, I'm not gonna sit here and get on my knees and beg for every vote. I'm not doing that. I'm not gonna degrade myself that way. I'm gonna tell people they should do something that they can do right now, and they should elect themselves and be the change they want to see in the community.
All right, Jose. Best of luck to you. Thank you so much for being here. Good luck to you. We'll check in with you as you're collecting those signatures or just after to see how you've done on that. Hopefully you get it. Hopefully you get on the ballot, and hopefully we see you in Congress in the early next year. So
you looking to be my chief of staff?
I could be your press secretary, but then I might say some crazy things.
I can't deny the moon landing. I can't have that. Anything else is fine, but you deny that, I'll fire you.
I'm telling you, Jose, I'm going to convert you on that one. You just wait.
Good luck.
Well, you'll be more skeptical, we'll say, when I'm done with you on that.
Okay.
All right, Jose. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.